Welcome back to Soul Plus Systems. This isn't a podcast about pretending that life was ever easy. It's about what happens when people hit a wall and choose to rebuild instead of repeat. And today's guest comes from a background shaped by addiction, violence, survival, and generational cycles that could have easily defined the rest of her life. But instead of staying trapped inside those patterns, she made the decision to walk away and rebuild herself from the inside out. Today's conversation isn't about transformation. It's not the polished social media version. It's the real version, the painful version, and the version where you have to confront who you were and what shaped you and whether you're willing to become somewhat different. So welcome into Soul Plus Systems.
Okay.
Hey, so before we get deep into your story, I want to start out kind of simple. For the listeners, who are you today in your own words?
A fighter, a rebuilder, and a momentum builder.
Perfect. Do you feel like that version of you always existed somewhere underneath everything? Or did you have to completely build her from scratch?
Oh, I had to start it all over from scratch. I had to walk away from who I was to become who I am.
You mentioned that there was a point where you consciously chose to walk away from the cycles that you were born into. So take us back to that moment. What was happening in your life emotionally and mentally at that time?
So I was dealing with cancer. I had just found out I had cancer for the second time. And I had a deep conversation with my eldest son. He was very disappointed with how life was just in all together with me, my relationships, how I was handling people around me, how I was dealing with, my life in a full circle. One day he says, Mom, either things have to change or I'm walking away. And I couldn't let that happen. So something had to change. And one day it was one of those, my daughter was coming home. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I roll out of bed. I hear the door and I walk in the hallway and look at her. And I said, you know what? Fuck that. I walked back in the room. I looked at the man I was married to at that time. I said, fuck that as well. And I was over it. And I said something had to change and it needed to start now. And at 2:30 in the morning, I started a whole 360. I was throwing people out. I was getting rid of things that no longer served the purpose and place in my life. And my whole mental state shifted. Second time having cancer. And I said, you know what? I refuse to let this end me. And something has to change. And if I only have today, right now, it's going to happen, whether it's my last moments or my forever future.
That's powerful. To think back on that moment at 2:30 in the morning and realizing all that you realized, I'm sure that it was pretty scary to step away from what was familiar. What was the one thing that you said that stood out to me the most was that you didn't just create distance, you created the transformation. And a lot of people physically leave the toxic environments, but mentally and emotionally, they still stay connected to them. What did you have to unlearn about yourself in order to actually change your life?
I had to unlearn that I wasn't satisfied being who everyone else had already known me to be me. My family had already decided who I was going to be. And unfortunately, that came out to be understood because my mother's an addict who also has a learning disability. And although I love my mother and I sympathize on her condition, I didn't want to be her. And I didn't want my family to keep accusing me and conditioning me to be someone I wasn't. I wanted to be my own person. And I was so stuck on being a people pleaser and so stuck on wanting to be anything and everything for everyone else that I literally forgot who I was, my passions, my hopes, and my dreams, and the things that brought me joy because I was so into what everyone else wanted for me that I forgot who I was all along.
Yeah, I can relate with that. The people pleasing and not having your own identity and taking those moments in our lives to actually understand that chaos probably felt pretty normal for a long time. I think a lot of people can identify with that. How did you rebuild your mindset?
Unfortunately, I had to undo everything that was my mindset altogether. I had to stop being the go-to for everyone. I had to stop being available all the time and saying yes for everything, even if it made me uncomfortable or was taking up my time. I had to say no to a lot of people and a lot of things in my life to start over. And then I had to go through an isolation phase for a period of time. And I became a hermit for a bit because I didn't know who I was for a long time. And I forgot who I was meant to be because I didn't feel that I was allowed to be who I wanted to be for so long. And it came to a point where, in those moments of being alone, I said, you know what? I can rebuild whoever I want to be, and I can turn into whoever I decide I want to become in the long run. And so it got to the point where I walked away from my birth name. I literally changed my first, last, and middle name, and I became someone new. And I grieved the old version of me. I had a burial and I said goodbye to that old version of who everyone remembered. And I even stepped away from family. I stepped away from old friends. I stepped away from environments. I no longer wanted anything to do with the old version of me because that person went through pain, torment, torture, anguish. I never want to feel that again. And so I said, enough is enough. And I am this new person and I can rebuild whatever I want to rebuild, out with the old and in with the new. So if it served no purpose, it deserved no place in my life.
Yeah, I can feel that to the core. Exactly what you've said. I've had to rebuild from moments of pure silence where I was my own best friend and the only person there, the hardest moments of my life. I can completely resonate with your story. So I know that you mentioned that you had some near death experiences shifting your perspective permanently. Without getting overly sensational with it, what changed inside you after those experiences?
So I I've had about 5 near death experiences, a few from when I was young. Most recent one was some years back. I ended up having a partial hysterectomy. Prior to this hysterectomy surgery, I had a dream, and the dream told me that I had to spare myself because there was going to be a certain amount of things that were going to happen during surgery that would jeopardize my life. So I was able to let my doctor know because we were connected and she knew me very well and knew the spiritual side of my life that she took me very serious. During surgery, we did have those complications I had already pre-warned her about, and she was able to spare my life. But in the process of that, I transitioned and I left out of my body for a bit, and I was able to look at myself, and I noticed that something was different in me. The old version of me, unfortunately, was dying, but then the new version of me said, there's so much capability in this body that I refuse to give up and let it go. So I had a choice, and I really was given a choice. I can leave and go to wherever it is that we go when we leave this earth, or come back and succeed in the new life that I was given. And I chose to live the new life that I was given permission to have and live that best life I can possibly have. And ever since that moment, I was about maybe, I want to say about 6 years back, I haven't skipped a beat. I've been hitting that pavement, running forward, and I refuse to look back.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Truly amazing. So now that caused you a great amount of clarity, you now work with people who are rebuilding themselves and try to break free from those destructive cycles. What are some of the biggest patterns that you keep seeing people that are trapped in? Is it the fear, the comfort of survival mode, or the lack of the self worth, or maybe staying attached to old identities?
So, what I tend to notice is a lot of people don't feel that they have permission to be someone different. And that's just a mental thing. Okay. So I like to encourage when I do a lot of my teaching classes, I like to encourage that you have the opportunity to rewrite and rebuild who you want to be right now. And so what I do with these classes, I do the actor, the producer, and then the person, where you get to actively write out your life in full. What's your story? Because the producer can't produce a movie unless they know a story. What's your story? Then you're going to be the producer and you're going to pick apart the parts of the story that have emphasize on feelings and emotion. What roles did you play and what roles did everyone else play? And then we're going to look at it as a person. Okay, because now you're going to look at your life in a fullness and see what you've been holding yourself hostage to all that time. Your story is not a life sentence. It happens and it passed. Now, who do you want to be? Where do you want to build from? And who do you want to run towards in the future? Because now is the time. Presence is the moment.
Absolutely. This podcast talks a lot about systems, mental systems, emotional systems, and survival systems. What's one habit or routine or boundary that genuinely changed your life?
My way of just telling people no. No has been my favorite word these days. I no longer serve purpose, pleasure thing when it comes to drama. So I'm a no holds bars woman. I don't have time for it. So when people come with me with the drama and the craziness, it's a no. I pause everyone right there and say, if it has nothing to do with me, I don't want part of it because I don't have time for it because I'm too busy worrying about me and all the things that I want to get into and run towards in the future.
I appreciate you coming on and being willing to speak openly about your story. I think a lot of people listening are trying to figure out whether transformation is actually possible for them. And conversations like this do matter. Tell everybody where they can follow you, connect with you, and learn more about your work.
They can follow me at Work Build Love Umbrella Networking Solutions, NFP, or wblifechoices@gmail.com. Or just Google me, Indigo Nikki Divine Brown. I'm everywhere.
All right. I will go ahead and list your socials as well. Now, to everybody listening, sometimes the hardest thing you'll ever do is become someone that your past no longer recognizes. But growth requires that, and transformation requires that. This is Soul Plus Systems. And remember, spectators watch and operators build. We'll see you in the next one.